Okay, great. So next slide, please.
All right.
I just wanted to share a little background about what brings us here today. As many of you know, in November of 2022, Portlanders voted to change the city government in 3 significant ways. One, the first of these is to allow voters to rank candidates in their order of preference using what we call a ranked choice voting method. And this new ranked choice voting method needs to begin and will take place in our upcoming November 2024 election. Second, we as a city are also have created 4 new geographic districts that will each elect 3 members, and it will expand our current city council, which is a mayor and 4 city council members, to a total of 12. And you can look up which district your address is in on portlandmaps.com. There's also more information on the City of Portland Transitions website. And then third, our city government is transitioning from a form of government where there's a city council that focuses on policy and we're transitioning to a form of government where our city council will focus on setting policy, and we will have a mayor and a city administrator who will focus on the operations of the city. And that includes management of the different bureaus of the city. And so these 3 changes are significant for our city. And so we're going through a lot of preparation work to get everything ready in time. We want to thank everyone who has joined us this afternoon for your interest in making sure that Portland is prepared, our Portland communities have the information they need to have a successful election with our ranked choice voting method. And so with that, I'd like to pass it back to Grace to share an overview about the Portland Votes 2024 grant program. And then following that, we'll have the bulk of our time reserved for just responding to questions and comments from the group. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. All right. So the purpose of this grants program, right? So overall, the point of so many people of the work that the city is doing, their work that Multnomah County and the other counties that touch Portland are doing, and a lot of different people, is to make sure voters are ready to go this November with the new way of doing elections in Portland for city elections. So making sure folks understand ranked choice voting. If I had one goal, it's to make sure every voter has seen a ranked choice ballot before they cast their vote in the November election. And there's ways that we're going to do that. Everyone kind of plays a different role in this project, but this one specifically in this grants program is dedicated towards focusing our outreach on voters who've historically been left out of city decision-making. So folks who have not been a part of that process as deeply. And so we really want to make sure that we're doing that outreach in a way that's smart and efficient and effective. And the way that I always view that, as there's other cities that have done this national or across the country and other places where we've seen it. And what I found is the best practice is to trust people to know their communities and to be able to work within them and not reinvent the wheel. And so what this program is dedicated towards doing is funding local nonprofits and community-based organizations to do outreach to their communities and ensure that informs people about the process and empowers them to cast their ballot on election day. Now, there's a lot of partners in this project, so I'm going to tell you who folks are. I'm the second bullet point, spoiler alert. Portland United for Change is the lead organization that is working with the city on this project. So this is a group that is dedicated to educating voters. And then within that, there are a couple partners on the project, my organization being one of them, that is Democracy Rising. Hearts and Minds is our communications partner on the project. And we have an absolutely fantastic team made up of the United Way, who are the fiscal sponsors for Portland United for Change. The City of Portland, we've worked with folks on the transition team, folks in the auditor's office, and just have an absolutely incredible team there, as well as the wonderful folks at Multnomah County. So there are a lot of really smart minds that have gone into designing this project, and we are so excited that we're at the point where we're going to be able to have those applications for the grant program come in and then move forward with the amazing programming that our partners are going to do. So we want to talk about what it's going to take to apply for these grants. We really want to make sure everyone who's applying is eligible so that we can consider your application if you're planning to apply. First, this is at the bottom, but I actually think it's really important. Applicants do not have to be voter education organizations to apply. That does not have to be the main focus of your work as an organization. The main thing we're looking for is connections to the communities that we're trying to reach and making sure that folks are able to effectively communicate that message in those communities. But beyond just that, the things that applicants will need to have, they need to be located within the city of Portland. They need to not be on the Oregon Department of Justice list of disqualified charities, and they can commit to our use of funds requirement. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we will be providing training with our program team and really making sure that it's clear these funds for this grant program cannot be used for any kind of electioneering. It cannot be used to help candidates or anything like that. There needs to be a very, very clear line between anything regarding influencing the election itself and making sure voters are able to participate in that election. So we need to really see a clear commitment from folks. Then the last couple things are we will be providing training and materials to our grantees. So again, with that not needing to be a voter education organization, we need you to be an expert in your community. We are the experts in ranked choice voting, and we will train you and provide you with all the materials you need to be as effective as possible. So we will combine our strengths to make sure we're really putting on a strong front in the community and we're providing that education. So that's largely where we're at. And then we really want to encourage folks who are engaged with priority populations as the city defined them in this project scope, which I'll go over in the next slide. But if you're engaging with the populations that we're particularly seeking out in this project, we really hope that you're able to apply, and we really hope that you have fun, like exciting and creative ideas for how we can reach out to these communities. So I'm going to quickly run through the list of the priority communities that the city defined for this project. So that is Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color, immigrants and refugees, seniors, so that's folks who are over 65 years old, people with disabilities, members of the city's minority language communities, so that includes Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, Somali, Ukrainian, Romanian, Nepali, and one that I am not going to mispronounce today. Unhoused and housing insecure residents, communities with limited digital access, and then also residents of neighborhoods with turnout below the city average. So that largely was defined as residents of the new districts that we've drawn for the city. Those would be council districts 1 and 2. One thing we really want to point out, though, is there may be additional communities that are not defined in this scope, and we don't want to be limited by this view. We are not limited by this number of communities. And so if there are other potential communities that fit within this lens of folks who have historically been left out of city decision-making, we encourage you to apply and let us know why that community is one that we really want to focus on, or just explaining the needs of said community so we can be responsive. So we would really appreciate anybody who is kind of looking at engaging with folks that may not be in this list perfectly, right? But don't let that dissuade you from making your proposal and letting us know. Also, we want to really recognize there is a lot of intersectionality within all of these, and we encourage folks to have that reflected in their applications as well. So this is the list that was provided initially, and we really want folks to explore within that. And we're looking forward to the conversations that we can have both in reviewing applications, but also in the process of determining grants. All right, so there is $210,000 as a part of this funding program, and we are planning to give out grants in 3 categories. So direct voter education, community education, and then communications grants. And they're slightly different, but largely the point of this is there's a couple ways you can go about a voter education campaign, and I've seen different ones in different places I've worked across the country. There is the kind where you can build all kinds of voter education infrastructure and mount this huge, massive campaign that can cost millions and millions of dollars. Or you can trust communities to know what's best for them, right? So you can really invest in communities and have folks build the programming themselves with what they understand and their expertise and insights from past experiences in their community. And that is the route that we decided to go here, is really investing in existing organizations rather than building an entire infrastructure to do it all outside of that. And so these grants reflect different abilities and capacities for organizations to do that outreach. And I'll go through each of them individually and what we're sort of looking for. Also on the RFP page, or the request for proposal page on the city's website, there's sample activities that we list for each of these. And I want to highlight the word sample. It gives the idea of the scale of activities that we're looking for, but I am not necessarily looking for, or we as a team are not looking for that exact list, but it gives you the idea of effort that we're looking for in those campaigns, or the amount of commitment that we'd be looking for, and the infrastructure that we're hoping each of these levels would have. So we'll go through individually. All right, so for direct voter education. So these are folks who would have a citywide reach. These are folks who may have a record of educational opportunities and really having experience doing this across the city. And these grants would range from $30,000 to about $50,000. So this is something where we'd want somebody to have that direct contact capacity. So someone who may be able to phone bank or text bank or distribute materials. And I'm going to give some examples that I have from other implementation experiences to let you know the sort of groups where we've seen a ton of success and really great projects that I've seen. So I'm going to give you an example from Santa Fe, New Mexico. In 2018, it was the first time Santa Fe was using ranked choice voting, and a grant like this was given to an organization called Chainbreaker Collective, and they were a transportation-focused organization who did a lot of canvassing. So they already had a canvassing program, and they reached out particularly to neighborhoods with low turnout to encourage folks to engage on transportation issues. So what we did when they applied for this grant and we accepted it is we didn't ask them to change their issue set that they were talking about. They weren't talking about candidates. They were saying, hey, do we need more bus routes? Hey, do we need more shuttles coming around to pick people up, really pulling the community. And so what they did is they pulled the community on those issues by having a ranked ballot. They said, hey, we have these 5 issues that we're interested in working on. Rank those issues in order of what's most important to you and what would be more beneficial, right? This great process where they could get information from their voters, and they built it into their existing efforts. And so that way, when voters finished filling out that ballot of the issues that they cared about, the canvasser, all they had to say is, by the way, this is how you're going to fill out your ballot in for them, it's March. For ranked choice voting, for you all, it will be November. But they worked it into that existing infrastructure that they had to reach voters directly. And it was a great program where not only did the organization learn a lot about what voters were thinking when it came to transportation, but they also educated those voters about ranked choice voting in the process. So it was really a win-win, but it was a really effective way to do this. So that's something that we're imagining, is somebody who has the infrastructure to do that outreach, and ways that we can think creatively together to build in the ranked choice voting education. All right, so the next one would be, we're talking about a specific population and an organization that is really dedicated to that specific population with paid staff. So in this, a pretty heavy thought there is prioritizing language groups and folks that are really able to do engaging and in-depth education in language and be really responsive to folks like that. So assist in assuring that materials are accurate and relevant and engaging. I know sometimes those materials can look intimidating to folks, and we want to work with community-based organizations to ensure that they are approachable and that folks are able to engage with them. That could be hosting town halls. So another example of this is we worked with an amazing organization in New York City who worked specifically with the Chinese population and the Korean population. And so they hosted events in language, entirely in language, to make sure that folks were aware. And actually, we had an instance where there was a candidate who was giving out some misinformation, and this organization texted a bunch of its members and trusted community leaders to make sure that that disinformation was disregarded and that folks were educating people in the correct ways and filling out their ballots correctly. So it was a great use so that the community could come together and really process these things, but also that if somebody was trying to disrupt, there was already folks in the community who had done the education ahead of time, but also could be responsive. So that organization is called the Ming Quan Center for Community Action, and they do incredible work. Just want to shout them out. But that's an example of the type of organization we'd be looking to. So really focused on a particular community, but able to develop programming to put that education into the community in whatever ways work best. And the last would be communications. So really just getting the message out to a specific organization. So these would likely be social service providers in different ways. So there's a lot of different ways we can see folks working directly in community and engaging directly with folks. But this would largely be distribution of materials, emails to membership, social media posts, things like that, but really getting the message out from a trusted voice in the community. There's a lot of different ways this can look. So I'll use a couple different examples. So in places, let's see, in Alaska, we worked with the Polynesian Association of Alaska, and they had really specific things that they wanted to get out to their community, and they really wanted to make sure that everybody was aware and engaged. And so they have monthly meetups that are largely potlucks, and at each of these meetups, everybody got a handout that it described how their ballot was going to work. And at every potluck meetup, everybody voted on their favorite dish that was at that potluck. So they used a ranked choice voting ballot, a mock ballot, to vote on their food. So they had that practice, but they also got to understand the practice on the other hand. There's other groups like, I just want to shout out all the amazing folks I worked with, but another one in Alaska that we worked with was called Voz de la Medianoche. So that's a Spanish focus group, not necessarily any particular nationality, but just basically for any Alaskans that are speaking Spanish. And what they did was a lot of social media posts and great messaging in Spanish to their lists and making sure that they could participate in online mock elections, various things. So there's a lot of room for creativity in all of these. I hope that those examples were somewhat helpful in how you can do that outreach. But also we want to trust our partners to put that forward and give us an idea of what may work best for you. So there are not really hard and fast rules other than the tiers that we're talking about, other than the levels of engagement. But beyond that, we really want you all to be able to explore and see what you think is going to work best. So once we have all of those applications, we will then be evaluating them. So there will be a team with members from the program team like myself, folks from the city, and others who are able to come together as a group from different perspectives on this project to evaluate these applications and determine who's going to receive these grants. So the scoring is going to be based on the organization and the project team. Do we think they are really able to do the level of work that they've applied for? Do we think that they have the reach in the community? The project plan and benefits. This is obviously the biggest thing, is really seeing a clear plan for how we think this can reach the priority populations that we've defined, or a priority population outside of what we've defined, and how we think that's going to have an impact and benefit on that community. And then finally, the budget, just a part of this, making sure it fits within our larger plan. So that's largely what we'll be evaluating on. So there will be a large team with representatives from the city, county, our project team, looking at these applications and making those decisions. So just want to make that clear. And then I can't say it enough, when reviewing those sample proposal activities, they're an outline. Use them as a guideline if that's helpful, but it's the type of work that we're imagining. If you have a different skill set or a different capacity that you think would be beneficial, please write your proposal to that. We are really interested in being creative and really thinking outside of the box on how we do this, especially if the ways that we've described that work are not necessarily responsive to a community's needs that you're working in. If there are questions or certain activities that you would like to include in your proposal that you're not sure would be effective, please reach out and ask us. We'd be happy to discuss. And we definitely want to be open and making sure that when you are submitting your proposal, if there is those lingering questions or any doubts, we want to help at least talk through that so that you are able to put together a proposal and not worried that you may be putting something forward that we're not able to fund. All right, so we said this before, and I really want to reiterate it again. So these grants cannot be used for political campaigning or electioneering. That just needs to be so clear. And so it's just a very hard line that we're going to have for this work. We want to build trust in the community, and I think it's really important that that trust extends to the education work being for the benefit of the voter and not for the benefit of someone else. So use for these funds can only be nonpartisan voter education about the City of Portland's education, the City of Portland's election methods. Those project activities totally prohibited from being combined with any activities. So if there is an organization where there, maybe you have an education fund that only does education work, but there is also a C4 component, a 501c4, where you can do kind of that political activity. There cannot be overlap in those activities at all whatsoever. They have to be entirely separate. And that just needs to be super clear. If there's any candidate support, these funds need to be completely separate. The way they're used need to be separate. The way they're seen needs to be separate. And in addition to that, to ensure that, grantees will be required to sign a document agreeing that they will use the funds how intended. I know in the past, my organization does not do any campaign related work, but in the past I have worked for organizations that do. And I know that oftentimes there are great folks within organizations who can really help define that. And we also will help you define that. So we will provide training on sort of what the line is and where we need you to steer clear. So you will have help in that regard. And if there are questions, if you are a grantee and you run into a question, we are a team. And so reaching out and asking those questions before we have to worry about it is really what we'd recommend. But yeah, we just want that really clear up front. And then once we're in it together, really working through solutions to make sure that there is no confusion about who is doing the voter education, and the point of the voter education is solely the voter and nothing outside of that related to the election. All right, the last thing before we dive into our Q&A is going to be the timeline. So it is April 16th and applications are due on April 30th. So you still have a little bit of time to work those out. I hope this session can help answer those questions, or if there are questions we can't answer today, we will follow up with email for folks who have those questions and folks who are on this webinar to answer those. So we should have answers to you well within the time that you will be submitting those applications. And then throughout the month of May, our program and project team will be reviewing those applications and really looking at them, going through them with a fine-tooth comb, going through that evaluation process that I described. In late May, and / early June, there will be a notification of who is being awarded those grants. And then going into June and July, we will finalize contracts and grant notifications or grant agreement letters. We will provide you training. It will likely be myself, and I look forward to meeting all of our grantees in person. And then the work will begin, and we will start working as a large coalition of organizations with the same goal, which is to educate as many voters as we can and really be responsive and engaged in communities. So that is our timeline. The main thing that we're focusing on now is that April 30th due date. So with that, I'm going to go into Q&A. Jennifer, if you wanted to come back on, I think I can stop screen sharing probably, or happy to leave the Q&A button up, but I haven't gotten a chance to look yet.
Yeah. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, I think that's fine to stop the screen share. And also we do have some questions in the Q&A. So again, if you have any questions or comments related to the information, please put that in there. And there's also a thumbs up next to some of the questions if you want to upvote them. If it basically reflects the same question you might have, go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and read them, and so that we can get to them. Currently we have 4. So just to start with, the first question is, who is making and paying for the printed materials? So Grace, would you like to start with that one, or would you like me to?
My understanding is the city will be making the printed materials. So the city will be designing collateral for all the organizations to use. One thing that we found is a best practice in educating voters is to be really consistent in our messaging. We realize that when you're focusing on different language communities, consistency in that way is not necessarily possible, just because there's all kinds of different ways that folks will need to make sure that message resonates. But by and large, the base materials that we'll be developing will be developed by the city. As far as printing materials, Jennifer, I'm actually not 100% clear on that. So my understanding is, actually, I don't have an understanding. So if you have any insight there, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I would say in addition to that, you know, in collaborating with Multnomah County, we'll also be producing some printed materials as well. And so that's where we're coordinating, and we'll provide those materials to and make them available for sub-grantees. In terms of the printing costs, this would be so we will have digital files for many of these documents. And I think that can be included we'll make printed materials available if there's a special event that a grantee wants to propose that reaches a large number of people. We may, and they want to include that in their proposed budget, that's also an eligible expense that they could include in a budget request via the grant. So
awesome. All right, I'll go to next
you can
question I'm seeing. So our community is going to be filmed by Hearts and Minds. I'd say, like, generally, I don't think that's like a plan of their programming. However, grantees and Hearts and Minds may work together to assist in the media campaign for this project. So Hearts and Minds is going to be doing the sort of public communications around this and working with a lot of community specific media outlets and things like that. And there may be situations where a partner organization is a trusted messenger in that community, and they may work together to get that message out there. But it is not a requirement, a requirement for this grant to be filmed. So I think that's kind of the baseline there. I think if there is a want to be a part of those things, we can definitely, you know, as I said, once we've given out those grants and you're part of the coalition, you're a part of the team, we want to be collaborative in the ways that we can. So if that's of interest, I think it's something we can explore, but it is not a requirement by any means. All right. Let's see. Will the committee do a pre-site visit or interview to ensure U-Select actually does the work within the communities? So I think that's part of how we're doing this evaluation process. So we have a large evaluation team. So to repeat, the question is, you know, will there be a pre-site visit or an interview to ensure who U-Select actually does the work within the communities? And I think that's a great question. Largely, we have built a program and a project team to do the evaluation who's pretty familiar with a lot of the organizations working across the space. So I think if there are flags raised or questions that we have, we'll follow up with folks during that review process or as we're making those decisions. As far as a pre-site visit, no, I don't think that's planned or an interview. We're really relying on those applications to give us a sense of what folks are capable of and wanting to do in their communities. And then the program team will be there to evaluate and assess the work that we're expecting from that organization and if they're up for it. Someone else asked, will the United Way host any education sessions? So the United Way is the fiscal sponsor for Portland United for Change. So they're involved to the point where they're kind of the home that Portland United for Change lives within. I am not sure specifically what United Way's programming would be around voter education, but I know that this program team, which is a fiscally sponsored project of United Way, will be able to host education sessions and really work with grantees to ensure they are totally up to speed. So I will play a role in that. There are others on the project that will play a role in that. So we will make sure that there are educational opportunities available. One thing I want to make sure is really clear as well is, you know, we have a limited amount of funds for this grant program. If your organization is going to be doing voter education work, whether you receive this grant or not, we would love to engage with folks and make sure that everybody's on the same page for voter education, best practices, messaging, things like that. So if there are folks who, you know, may or may not fit within this description, we still would love to work together and make sure that you have everything you need and we can be partners in that. A good example of how that works is a couple of years ago when I was working in Alaska, the AARP was doing a lot of voter education work, and we said, hey, we have this grant program. And they said, hey, we actually have all the funding we need and we don't need to work with you. I've never heard of an organization who felt that way, so it was really exciting for them. But we still partnered and we did a train the trainer with them, and we still really worked together to make sure we were doing everything to be responsive to the community of folks they were serving. So just because this grant program is in this space doesn't mean we can't still work together. This info session is really just for folks to fill out those applications. The next one, I'm so happy this question was asked. If our population is not on the population or the priority population list, it is though. So, and if the programming is in English, should we still apply for Category 2 grants? I realize that we said in parentheses there that this was kind of priority to language focus groups, but I would encourage folks to apply for whatever tier they think that they have capacity for. So if there isn't sort of this larger direct voter contact capacity, I think it would be great to apply for that level 2. Youth outreach is my favorite kind of outreach to do because it's often the audience that is the most excited and excitable. So absolutely apply for the audience that you think you can be responsive to. And, we can't make guarantees. We have a limited amount of funding for this, but I'm thrilled at the idea of it and would love to see an application. So if you don't fit perfectly within that, as I said, those sample activities and the tiers are guidelines that we're using, but they're not finite. So definitely make the proposal for the communities that you can engage with, and we would love to review them. The next one, so is the work expected to be completed within 4 months? Yes. I wish my work was not defined by election schedules, but unfortunately it is. Largely the reason we're kicking off in June and we have a sprint to election day is because you all have a statewide primary in May, and we didn't want to confuse voters by saturating the space with voter education when there is a primary election where ranked choice voting is not going to be used. So we are going to be doing this quickly. We are going to be nimble. We are going to move swiftly, and I am here with you along for the ride and will provide all the support that I can. But yes, we are launching in June, going a little bit further than 4 months, but going to election day and really making sure that we get the work done in that time. Do you need to have a 501c3? That is a really interesting question. If you are an organization that is kind of like established and has that tax status, we would need you to be a 501c3 rather than a 501c4. Outside of that, I know sometimes there can be volunteer-based organizations that may not be incorporated in that way. Jennifer, if you have any takes on that, otherwise we can definitely get an answer to you if there's any other structure.
So the answer is no, you don't need to be a 501c3. So going back to one of the first slides around the eligibility, I think that Grace went through, there's those primary areas that are for eligible applicants to this grant program. And that said, we definitely are reaching out as one of the many different audiences and potential applicants for this opportunity to community-based organizations, many of which are 501c3s. So.
Awesome. The next one is, what will expectations be for follow-up/reporting afterwards? Whoever asked this question, I appreciate you. So there will be reporting throughout the process. So I'm going to be really involved in that process and working with you both to support what you need. If there are materials that you wish existed, we will help make them exist for you and really be a partner in that process. But also throughout, I'll be expecting, so I'd say monthly around their reports from folks to understand our impact, to understand if we need to shift our focus, if we're not having the impact in certain ways, to adjust the work that we're doing to make sure we're being responsive. So there will be pretty regular communication with the project team throughout. And then afterwards, yeah, there will be probably a wrap-up report that we'll want to see, so you can brag about the amazing work that you did and tell us you contacted a bunch of voters and you saw amazing results. So we will definitely want some reporting afterwards. We'll be really clear with you and give you plenty of lead time to give us that. but we will want to definitely hear about what's going on and be able to track our success. The next one is, can religious organizations apply? I know in the past I have worked with religious organizations and they have done fantastic jobs of reaching out to their communities, but Jennifer, I don't know if we have any specifics for Portland around that. So I will defer to you.
Hey, so looking kind of going back to those three main areas, yeah, we can find them and put them in the chat, but the three main eligibility requirements for this grant opportunity are don't preclude religious organizations. So we'll grab that verbiage and put that in the chat too. But just to recap, yeah, so it's just the main being located within the city of Portland. The second is not being on the list of I'm not going to recite them. I'm going to find it and type it in. And then the third is around being able to acknowledge and adhere to the use of funds requirements of the grant. So we'll put that in the chat for everyone.
And that list is the Oregon Department of Justice list of disqualified charities, if that wasn't a mouthful enough, but we did it. So I hope that's helpful. I saw someone asking about folks in this project reaching out to grassroots organizations to connect with them and re-engage them, or at least reconnect to apply before within the time so that communities can be engaged. So Hearts and Minds, Portland United for Change, all the folks on this project have developed as many organizations as we can think of to reach out to invite both to this session, to let them know about the application process. And so we really tried to develop that list. I know we were up in the 70s of organizations, maybe even more than that, but we definitely will reach out to our folks on this program team, including Hearts and Minds, and say, hey, is there anybody missing from this list who we need to be involved, and really want to make sure that they're engaged and at least invited to apply for this. So that's great advice. I hope we're taking it as to the length that you are hoping, and we will continue doing so up until the 30th and making sure we're engaging as many organizations as possible. As I said, even if we can't fund folks, we really do want to partner with as many people as we can to ensure this outreach is as broad and as deep as it can be before the election. So thank you so much for that question. That's super helpful. And I hope our outreach efforts are already being responsive to your very, very helpful question. Oh my gosh, is that all the questions? And those were amazing questions. Thank you so much. It was all the stuff that I had on my little list over here to go over anyway. So thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. We'll give a few minutes or a couple minutes in case there's any lingering ones, but beyond that, Jennifer, what is the transition email that folks can email questions to if something comes up after this?
So that is transition@portlandoregon.gov. We'll also drop it in the chat. So Perfect. If there are follow-up questions that come up after the session.
Yeah, so if those things come up, that will go to the project team. We will be answering as quickly as we can. And we recognize that there is a time crunch between now and the 30th, so we'll really be on top of that. Also, and just in case there's anyone on here who already applied for the grants, if you learned anything today that changed what you are wanting to express or do within that grant funding, if you've already applied and you want to submit a slightly different application with a little more info from this session, we will take the most recent submission that you give us. So that's totally fine. And beyond that, anything that we felt iffy about today, or we feel like we want to make sure our answer is super clear with you all, we'll send a follow-up email to folks who attended. We'll also send this recording around to the folks who we have been reaching out to. So for those folks who had questions about organizations that we may want to tap, I'd love your partnership in maybe forwarding this info session along to those folks and encouraging them to apply.
Yes.
So, yeah,
the recording, yes, following this afternoon, we'll post this recording on the web page, which is for the Portland Votes grant program, as well as in a few days, a follow-up PDF that has a summary of the questions and responses to the questions asked today, as well as others we've been receiving through the email. So yeah, so stay tuned for that.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to hang out for just a minute or two to see if there's any lingering questions just in case. But beyond that, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to learn more about this program. I am so excited to work with folks and really get this off the ground. So best of luck with drafting those applications. I cannot wait to read them, and anything we can do in the meantime to make sure that you're supported in that process, let us know. But with that, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all.